evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, publishes the Human Development Report and has done so every year, annually since 1990. Central to the report is the Human Development Index, which ranks countries based on life expectancy, education, and per capita income indicators. So this year's Human Development Report, however, revealed a troubling trend that rich countries are experiencing record high levels of human development, while half of the world's poorest countries remain below their pre-pandemic levels of progress. Joining me on the show today to discuss this widening human development gap is Niloy Banerjee, who is the United Nations Development Programme Resident Representative for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. Niloy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you back and in person with us today.
Thank you, Melissa.
So I want to talk about this latest Human Development Report. This concerning trend of uneven progress, leaving the poorest behind, exacerbating global inequality. Talk to me a little bit, maybe help put that into context for us. What does a widening human development gap look like, and why is it happening? What factors are contributing to it?
Well, if I have to characterize this Human Development Report, it's a deep sigh.
A deep sigh?
Yes.
Oh, that's sad.
Because, you know, somehow the most intelligent species on Earth ever is unable to come together to figure out solutions to what should be fairly easily solvable problems. So what we are seeing a period where we need to have tremendous collective action, for example, on climate change. It affects everyone from Germany to Ipoh. Doesn't matter. Yet we are seeing a polarized world where there's very little trust, there's very little cooperation going on. We are having more conflicts right now for the first time since 1945, since the end of the Second World War. We have more conflicts today since then. Wow. So this is a polarizing world. The world is, yes, it's rich countries are getting richer, doing better. Poorer countries are not doing so well. And somehow many of these countries fell off the wagon during COVID. Most countries fell off the wagon during COVID. But now we are kind of at a position where some countries have recovered and some countries will never recover some of their losses, including the 15 million we lost for COVID.
Right. Well, why is that so? I mean, during COVID, we all pledged to build back better. I mean, that was the mantra. We said it every day.
Yes.
Why didn't we?
We did not do enough to build trust. There's a fundamental gap in trust between citizens and governments, citizens and institutions, between countries, between races, religions. We are not doing well on that. 3 billion people of the people we surveyed, 3 billion of this planet think they're not in control of their lives. Someone else, that their vote doesn't matter, their voice doesn't matter, what they say doesn't matter. That's a very, very worrying trend. We have some kind of a polarization going on in society, which shouldn't have to be. Because like I said, this is the time when we need to come together. We built a vaccine from scratch in 15 months.
I mean, we achieved quite a lot during,
We did.
that we can be proud of.
Absolutely.
But it feels like, you know, like you said, a deep sigh that we could have done so much more, but we didn't rise to the occasion. I'll come back to the issue of polarization and building trust, which I think is very important. But I want to focus a little bit on Malaysia's ranking. So Malaysia ranked 63rd out of 191 countries in the Human Development Index. Maybe you can provide some insights as to Malaysia's performance in some of the key indicators.
So look, Malaysia does a score of 0.807. Which is the human development scale is 0 to 1. So Malaysia does 0.807, which puts it in the very high human development. Anything above 8 is very high human development.
Okay.
Malaysia does very well because it has a small population, so per capita income is high. So that's one of the big scorers. Malaysia's health score is good. It's a 76% life expectancy, 76 years life expectancy, so that's good. Education was great, but is beginning to be a bit worrisome.
Okay.
Between 2019 and now, since 2016, Malaysia has seen a downward trend in enrollment in tertiary education. What that means is young people don't want to go through the hassle of getting higher education because probably there's more cash out there. You can make money in the gig economy. You can be a driver for a on-demand taxi service,
right.
or so. I think there's a move. I can't prove it, but there's a move towards the gig economy, which is bringing good cash. But there's a whole group of youth who are feeling that the market is not giving them fair wages. They're feeling that they don't have jobs that keep them occupied and interested. So there's underemployment and depressed wages. And then there's the gig economy. So there's a bit of a shift towards the gig economy where people.
It could also be the need for immediate cash.
Indeed.
Is pressing today.
Indeed.
Okay, so how does that compare with our previous rankings? You've been in Malaysia for five years, 5.5 years now, and I'm just wondering, how have you seen our HDI ranking evolve? Has it changed? Has it improved? And what are your observations? What are we doing right, and where can we improve?
Look, if we had stayed at pre-pandemic levels, the trajectory was kind of here. Post-pandemic, the trajectory for Malaysia has been not exactly there, but it's a little bit there.
Okay.
So we're getting there. We're getting there. We've done the best ever. This is our best score ever since we started measuring the index in 1990.
Wow.
This is our best score ever. If it wasn't for the pandemic, we would be a bit higher. So from pre-pandemic to now, our recovery hasn't been absolutely rah-rah. It could have been more rah-rah. And I think it's the what we just talked about, the enrollment in education. That's kind of pulled it down a little bit. Fewer people are enrolling for college. It's dropping almost at the rate of 1 million in 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
So it's gone from 1.3 million tertiary education enrollment in 2021 to 1.2 million in 2022. So it's been quite a steep drop. So otherwise, Malaysia's scores are good. Since 1990, Malaysians have gotten richer by 167 times. So that's 167 times.
67
per
times.
capita income
It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but that's encouraging news.
because of inflation, of course. But and life expectancy has improved by 5 years between 1990 and 2022. So health and incomes in Malaysia are doing fine. There is inequalities for sure. But yeah, I think the education.
So just to ask you, to follow up on the education, Malaysia is not the only country that has a gig economy. It's around the world. And I think throughout other countries, I'm sure, must also be grappling with the same question. Young people wondering whether higher education is the right path for them. Is this something that you're seeing across other countries as well, or is it particular to Malaysia?
It's across countries. I think Asia is going through that because Asian economies by and large are doing well. So there is a lot of gig work to be done there. Post-pandemic also, during the pandemic, we also got used to a lot of this, the whole sort of delivery culture, online culture, right? Buying online.
Yeah, that stayed with us after
eating
the pandemic.
online. So that's created a whole new economy. The problem, though, Melisa, is that here are young people in their mid-20s, early 30s, who are not being trained for anything else. They are cash rich today,
Right.
but they're not trained for anything. They're not putting away anything in retirement funds. They're not putting away any pension, nothing. No medical insurance, nothing. So
Social safety net, no retirement.
Yeah, this could create an underclass going forward. Going forward, there could be a whole class of people who are not qualified for anything else other than driving motorcycles or cars, and who are not prepared for any eventuality that comes along. But yes, it's true, it's all across Asia that we're seeing this. In Malaysia, it's any sociological impact in Malaysia is felt more easily and more early than other countries. Thailand's population is double of Malaysia, right? So, so the ripple comes a bit later. Indonesia's is much larger, of course. Philippines is 100 million. Vietnam is 199 million. So you see, they're all much bigger, larger in population size.
Okay. So we're the canary in the coal mine that we need to pay attention to. I do want to ask you about that. So we're currently, so you said 0.807 out of in the Human Development Index, and we are 63rd. I saw a comment made by the Prime Minister last year who said this Madani government wants Malaysia to achieve at least the 25th ranking. And I was quite surprised at that figure. It's an ambitious goal to set, but do you think it's possible? What would it take for this Madani government to get us to number 25?
Well, Italy is at 40, so
okay.
Look, it's a steep ask, especially the timeline he said by 2030. But there are some low-hanging fruits where Malaysia can make a big difference, and you know this very well, Melisa. Malaysia's female labor force participation rate is very low. Women's GDP per capita is a lot less than men's GDP per capita. Just per capita income, what you earn in a year. Women are dropping out of the workforce. There's no reason why Malaysia should have so many women out of work, or women who are supremely well educated but are not staying in the workforce. And therefore, UNDP has talked a little bit about the care economy, that making the care economy, the caregiving, taking care of the elderly or children, a professional business, so that women are not having to drop out of their careers. There can be various combinations of how you do it. So that's one area where Malaysia could quickly boost its ranks, because a lot of the Malaysian ranking gets dragged down because of the difference in gender, the gender indices.
Okay, so that's something we can definitely work on. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Consider This. We will be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. I'm chatting tonight to Niloy Banerjee, the UNDP Resident Representative for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. We're discussing the latest Human Development Report, in which it highlighted rising polarization, division and trust. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. The fact that there's so much political polarization today, and the global repercussions of that, has us in this gridlock of trying to solve global challenges. Let's talk a little bit about how that impedes our efforts to address global challenges. And you mentioned earlier the climate crisis. I'm thinking of all the other areas of addressing conflict, of decarbonizing economies. Where do we begin in trying to address this rising polarization?
I think the first point to recognize is that we are all connected. Your phone probably got half made in one country, the semiconductors came from one country, the motherboard came from another country. So global supply chains are connected, global food chains are connected. There is absolutely no getting away from that. When the Ukraine conflict happened, you saw that the world's grain supply was disrupted. And now in the Red Sea, with the Houthi activity, you're seeing that ships are having to go around, and that immediately implies there'll be massive price rises, because you can't go through this, so you have to go all around the African continent. So here we are all connected, our lives are connected, whether we like it or not. So the first thing is building trust. There is this fundamental lack of trust in institutions. We don't trust our politicians. This is not Malaysia. I'm talking globally. We don't trust our politicians. We don't think we'll get fair justice in the court. We think the police are dodgy. You know, there's all sorts of misperceptions. We did a survey where we asked people, would you contribute out of your pocket to avert climate change? 69% said yes. And then the next question was, would you think that your neighbor would contribute towards climate change? 47% said yes.
Wow.
So you see, there's a huge perception gap. I am okay, you're not okay. So this is something, again, as I said at the beginning, the most intelligent species on Earth that is shaping the planet for the first time, beyond the planet shaping species, is unable to figure out this little thing, why we have these massive deficits of trust. We have this complete break between institutions and people, and then between countries. We have all these conflicts going on.
I found that chapter in the report the most fascinating, the agency gap chapter, the gaps in human agency, the divergence between what people believe is possible and what is objectively possible. And half of people surveyed, as you mentioned, half of people surveyed in this report have reported having no or limited control over their lives, and over 2/3 believe they have little influence over government's decisions. It's shocking to me.
Absolutely. And yet 90% believe in democracy.
90% believe in democracy.
You ask people, do
so
you believe in democracy?
Why this dichotomy? What is going on here? Why do we believe in democracy and yet don't believe that the government, that we have any influence in government's decisions?
This is the gap. This is what I'm talking about. That people need to. So we have to solve intelligently as a collective for how we bring people closer to this. So our institutions, for example, are still too remote from people. Can I participate in the decision making on the budget in my country? Can I participate in the decision making on petrol prices in my country? So the fact that institutions remain quite, it's no longer possible in the age of social media, artificial intelligence. It is no longer possible that institutions are out there making decisions,
Right.
somewhat removed from the people. So first, please include people in, and therefore create mechanisms where people can participate in decision making. Number one. Number two, anticipate the future. We are going to live, 2023 was the hottest year on record. We are going to live in a hotter planet, more floods, agricultural crop destruction. What are we going to do? How are we going to manage? Most of our net zero plans are for 2050. What am I, the poor farmer, going to do between now and 2050? Twiddle my, so that's where we've got to anticipate the future, bring people in, make institutions more responsive.
Okay. Is there, are we seeing the urgency and the political will for it? One of the other things that caught my attention in the report was this democracy paradox. As you mentioned, majority of people overwhelmingly believe in democracy, yet they continue to support and vote for leaders who are undermining democracy. That is completely a mismatch, and so it does not jive. How do we think about the repercussions of that on a global stage, addressing global issues like the climate crisis, like addressing conflict, like decarbonizing economies?
Yeah, this is the issue. Because people have lost trust in institutions, there seems to be a bit of a personality, follow the personality,
The strong
rather
man
than
effect?
okay. the cult thing, I think it's again, institutions need to get much closer to the people, but collective action is an absolute must. So we have to again recreate our systems of, for example, multilateralism, the UN, and other platforms like that, the OECD, the World Economic Forum, anything.
All right.
But we have to bring together people in a dialogue, but also recognize that people are not just going to, people are supremely well informed in this day and age. They're not just going to sit and wait to be included in decisions. They're frustrated and they want to be, and therefore this follow the strongman syndrome.
So can I ask you from the perspective of UNDP, also from the UN, to what extent do you think the agency gaps, as pointed out in the report, maybe have contributed to the skepticism or the disillusionment that international governance bodies like the UN have effectiveness or legitimacy in addressing global challenges? We think about whether or not the Paris Agreement is being put into action. We think about international law being flouted today. How do we, as an international part of the international institution yourself, have you seen that change in the way people trust and react to the UN and its work?
No, I'm actually quite despondent about that.
Okay.
And my personal view is that we have to somehow move away from global governance, which is based on 100% consensus. There will never be 100% consensus. Okay. We need to move away from consensus-based systems. We need to move towards what is the right thing to do, and is there a sufficient coalition of the willing behind the right thing. So, yeah, the UN's veto system doesn't work, for example. Why should 5 powers just have the veto on anything? And since these 5 powers are not mutually friendly, they veto each other's resolutions. So you can't move forward. So I think we have to really rethink, again, being intelligent, being future forward thinking, we have to think of other ways. Consensus-based decision making is not working. We've got to move forward and see coalitions of the willing. Is this the right thing to do? Let's move ahead. We have to tackle climate change. We have to tackle plastics in the oceans. We have massive biodiversity loss. What are we going to do? And we're just sitting waiting for the train to.
So you've highlighted that we are at this crucial crossroads in our civilization. We are at a point where polarization, distrust is on a collision course with an ailing planet. Where are the bright spots? You mentioned at the start of the conversation it felt like a deep sigh, but where can we find those the deep breaths that we need to take? Where are you seeing what we can do to turn things around?
I think there are bright spots for sure. If you see the Conference of Parties, the recent one in Dubai, the Loss and Damage Fund was, at least pledges were made to the fund. The Global Biodiversity Fund is up. So there's resources being put behind this, based on enlightened self-interest. It's not philanthropy.
Right. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. If the climate gets hot, it gets hot in Germany, and it gets hot in Sweden, and it gets hot in Malaysia. So everybody is affected. So this is what we call global public goods, right? Which stuff that everybody has a stake in, but nobody can individually pay for it. So one of the things that UNDP has been saying could be a bright spot is, like we have poverty alleviation funding, we have humanitarian funding, we should have a global public goods funding stream. So that's one of the first things that, so things like climate change need to be funded separately, all of us pooling together. All of us pooling together. I'm not saying this is just a rich country's burden. A second thing is really building these trusts, making institutions far more people-centered, far more co-owned, that you and I feel a part, that we are part of the police, or part of the judiciary, or part of the parliament, or part of whatever institution in this country. Suakam. And where people feel that they have a part in decision making. It's much easier now, thanks to technology. We can all be part of it. And I think the last sort of bright spot, if you like, is if we can, we are still making consensus deals. Until it broke up, the Secretary General of the UN negotiated the grain deal, where some ships were allowed to leave Ukraine with grains. that kind of managed global food prices. So there's consensus is still possible. People can still see eye to eye. There's lots to be hopeful about, but we've got to work on it. We are kind of losing our way, and that's the message of this report. Okay. It's a wake up call.
To wake up to the urgency of it. Niloy, thank you so much for being on the show with me and highlighting some of these troubling but very important trends.
Thank you, Melisa.
Thank you. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.